If your wife was going to a large-scale bachelorette party with her sister, where there would be alcohol and a lot of people, this party would be held in Las Vegas as a bonus. Would you be able to let your wife go? This is a very difficult decision that I had to face. On the one hand, I trust my wife, and on the other, this is Las Vegas. Damn. Friday. At noon, I entered our bedroom and felt a knot form in my stomach as I glanced around. My wife was packing, preparing to head to Vegas for a bachelorette party. The whole "what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas" spiel didn't sit well with me. If it weren't for the fact that it was for her sister, Sarah, I might have protested more, but I understood, begrudgingly. Family comes first, even if I detest it. My issue was that I couldn't afford the luxury of hiring a private investigator to tail my wife, nor could I jet off and play the role of a super spy. I trusted Jessica, my wife, implicitly, and I doubted anything untoward would occur. It was like betting on winning at Russian roulette, a risk I wouldn't take. I cherished my life and was content with it, damn it. Las Vegas. Ah, Las Vegas. It's not that our quiet suburb, Cornelius, lacks its share of predators or individuals seeking affairs with married women. Every community has its fair share. But Las Vegas seems to have an abundance of them, particularly of a higher caliber. Add alcohol and the allure of a bachelorette weekend away from spouses, and you have a perfect storm of potential trouble. Here's the condensed version of my wife and me. We met in college, a chance encounter in the library during finals week. It wasn't exactly love at first sight, but there was an instant connection. I saw her, she saw me, and smiles were exchanged. Without hesitation, I mustered up the courage to utter the legendary pickup line. Hi. At that time, I was 20, and she was 18, and we both had the same previous partner. We conversed, enjoying each other's company, then decided to stroll outdoors. I proposed a walk to the central quad, to which she responded with a smile. As we intertwined our fingers, it felt instinctive, as if hers was the hand meant for mine. It felt comforting and fitting. A mutual understanding settled between us. Though not yet love, as we shared a kiss, I gazed into the eyes of my future spouse. That evening, under the moon's glow, our kiss felt charged with chemistry. With a smile, she declared, "You're the one. You're the man I'm going to marry." A sense of relief washed over me. I had found my partner. Despite our certainty about our future together, it took 4 dates before we made love. She explained that she had wanted to on the 3rd date, but needed to start birth control, requiring a full cycle to take effect. The sensation of our skin against each other, the warmth of our bodies, and shared breaths felt like magic. Our connection was swift and intense. The declaration of love came scarcely 3 weeks into our relationship. It was clear to us both. We were perfectly suited for each other. Hey there, I'm Michael Mandel. I'm 32, and my wife Jessica is 30. I work as an outside sales representative for a prominent trucking company. I stand at 6 feet tall, slightly above average in appearance, but far from a model. My hair is a medium shade of brown, and well, let's just say I'm adequately endowed, though not exceptionally so. I maintain a healthy physique, and my family hits the gym together at the Y 4 days a week. They offer great family memberships at reasonable rates. It's important for our daughter to see us prioritizing fitness and health. As for Jessica, she is engaged in marketing for a company that manufactures equipment, deals with advertising, radio slots, and their presence on the internet. She has a sweet face, more charming than stunningly attractive. I got married to a woman slightly above me in position, but not so much that people wondered why she was with me. She is slim, weighs 120 pounds, and I admire her determination to lose weight. I understand that this is not an easy task for women. She's still a little shy about her remaining tummy, although it's only noticeable when she's sitting down and mentions it herself. You're crunching numbers and realizing she was 22 when we welcomed our daughter, Emily. Yeah. Antibiotics messed with birth control pills, and voila, Emily arrived, despite a 2-ball ligation. We had a scare toward the end, and the doctors declared us good with one child. Jessica was 8 months pregnant when she graduated college, 2 years after me. We tied the knot in a civil ceremony just a week after discovering the pregnancy. Sure, there was fear, but we always knew we were meant to be together, so this just sped up the timeline. Fast forward to now. I had our 8-year-old daughter to look after while she was away. My stomach was in knots, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. Call me paranoid or old-fashioned. A bachelorette party plus alcohol plus Vegas equals a terrible idea. In my marriage, I prioritize caution. As an outside sales representative for a major trucking company, a significant part of my role involves building rapport with people and treating them to meals, which I excel at. The other aspect entails navigating damage claims for freight that arrives in poor condition due to negligence on the part of the recipient. Often, employees carelessly accept deliveries without inspecting them, oblivious to evident signs of mishandling such as forklift damage. When I entertain clients over lunch, I ensure it's in a public, casual setting like Applebee's, where I indulge in their irresistible beer pretzel appetizers. If I dine with a female client, I always inform my wife via text, specifying the person's employer and the purpose of our meeting. This practice has become second nature to me. I cherish my life and my wife, maintaining transparency in all my communications and interactions with her. I took Friday off, so I drove to Charlotte Douglas Airport. When I stopped the car at departures and got my wife's suitcase from the trunk, I attempted to smile at her. But after 10 years, she could easily read me. She returned a sad smile and said, "Michael, trust me, okay?" I lowered my gaze. "I'm sorry." She gave me a peck on the lips and then gently stroked my cheek. "Michael, you've placed me on an impossibly high pedestal, one no woman can live up to." With a firmer kiss, she continued, "But I happen to like the view from up there. Okay? If I ever fall, I can never climb back up. What can I say? I love that high view." I managed a smile, still unable to fake it. She looked at me and said, "Michael, I love you. I love our daughter and I love my life." Without waiting for another fake smile, she wheeled her suitcase inside the terminal, refusing to look back at my insincerity. Yeah, I know. I'm an insecure jerk. Throughout the day, I made a concerted effort to push aside negative thoughts. My focus was on household chores and assisting my 8-year-old daughter with her extensive homework, a task that seemed excessive for a child her age. However, it served as a welcomed distraction. We decided to indulge in pizza and treated ourselves to oversized chocolate milkshakes at Dairy Queen. It's moments like these that make me question my parenting skills, wondering if I spoil my daughter excessively. By 6 in the evening, we were already on our way to Antonio's Pizzeria when my wife sent a text. Attached was a selfie of her dressed up for her first night out at bars, a prospect that filled me with discomfort. That dress she wore was meant for our special occasions, now hanging in the closet, a reminder of our past shared moments. I couldn't help but admire how stunning she looked in it. I received messages and a few snapshots each time they ventured to a new spot. The initial destination had some name resembling Tahiti, but it appeared more like a dive bar from the photos, pretty run down. They didn't seem to linger there long because shortly after I received word they were heading elsewhere. The subsequent venue, named Sherry Shenanigans, seemed to strike a balance between a bar and a dance club, appearing much newer and more upscale. It boasted a sizable dance floor alongside ample seating and a bar. After spending some time there, they informed me they were moving on, and later, I received more visuals. However, it was the third place they visited around 9 in the evening, called Attractions, that raised some concerns. It was a full-fledged dance club, precisely the kind of establishment I had hoped they would avoid. Upon looking it up online, it appeared to be a notorious hookup spot. At 10, I received an update indicating they were still at Attractions, along with a message stating, "I am a bit drunk but not too bad. I danced with Stephanie. Yes, I turned down all the guys who asked." Clearly, she was intoxicated, evident from her impaired typing skills and the autocorrect mishaps. By the time I went to bed at 11, there were no more texts. I just wanted the damn trip to be over. Jessica had never given me any reason to suspect cheating, but I was definitely Captain Insecure. It took me 4 agonizing hours to finally fall asleep, and it was a terrible sleep. Drinking spouses going to a pickup bar alone is a terrible idea, no matter what anyone says. Couples should never go to those places without each other. I'm not my wife's jailer, but I have to admit that night I wished I was. Saturday, I woke up in a foul mood and went to the bathroom. I got up before my daughter and walked into the living room, still feeling grumpy. I had left my phone there last night, so I picked it up. There was a text from 12:01 a.m. I left. Another text came in at 12:05 a.m. At room. There was a selfie of her in her room. She looked quite drunk, not completely wasted, but with those blurry eyes. Then there was another text at 12:15 a.m. Going to bed. There was another selfie of her from the shoulders up. She sleeps naked. On our wedding day, she gave me 3 wishes, and I chose this as my first. You will always sleep naked without exception. Yes, I know I'm lucky, and she now prefers it. I could never get her to send me nudes, and I would have loved that. But I'll take what I can get. I love waking up and pulling her bare body close to mine, spooning her. She likes it too, maybe even more than real intimacy. I get both, so I'm happy. As a guy, I prefer my wife naked whenever we're alone. And yes, she indulges me. I started having darker thoughts. Why had she sent me those pictures? I felt guilty. I was sitting there with a sinking feeling in my stomach when I received another text. Felt 13:04, arriving Charlotte 3:30 p.m. today. What? She wasn't supposed to be back until Sunday. I called her immediately, but it went to voicemail. My heart dropped. I called again, and when it started ringing, I feared it would go to voicemail again. She answered on the 4th ring, and I asked anxiously, "What is going on?" I feared the worst. A woman drunk at a bachelorette party in Vegas is a terrible combination. She was crying when she barely managed to say hello. My heart sinking was nothing compared to how I felt now. I repeated, "What is going on?" Through her sobs, she said, "I can't say. I just need to come home." I said, "Jessica, you're scaring the hell out of me." She was softly sobbing now. "I can't say why." There was a long pause. "Just pick me up." She hung up. Her last sentence was more of a demand than a request. I received a text at 10:10. "They're telling us to turn off our phones. We'll be taking off soon. I was good. I promise." I know it was supposed to reassure me, but that last message only made me more anxious. It felt like a preemptive excuse for something that had already happened. About half an hour later, things took a turn for the worse. My phone rang. "Michael Mandel?" I answered. "Yes." There was a heavy sigh, and the guy's voice trembled a bit. I think you should know. Our wives cheated last night." Wham! My stomach dropped even further. I've heard of guys throwing up at this point, but that wasn't it for me. It felt like I had severe acid indigestion, as if I had drunk the acid from my car's battery. I didn't think it was possible, but it got worse. Much worse. The caller's name was Tom, the husband of a friend of her cousin Stephanie. He found my number on a contact list the women had shared. He asked for my email, which I gave him. He requested that I keep this information private, as he was helping coordinate a confrontation for all the husbands involved the next afternoon at 4 o'clock. 5 minutes later, I received a link to a Google Drive folder and downloaded it. It contained pictures. Bad pictures. Hundreds of bad pictures. Damn it. Her cousin Stephanie's phone was linked to their Apple iCloud account and set to upload in real time. According to Tom, Stephanie's husband had stopped receiving updates around 9 the previous evening, so he started searching for clues by 1 in the morning. All he had to do was check their Apple account, and he found what he was looking for. He became more worried as his wife's phone kept going straight to voicemail. I began to sift through the images, mentally running through the list. Split the savings, freeze the credit cards, call a lawyer. Damn it. Why do women have to cheat on a Friday? Why couldn't I find out on a Monday so I could get the divorce process started? There were 2 folders, one labeled Dance Club Pics, some bad, and the other labeled Party Room, very bad. I opened the Party Room folder. The pictures were, well, there was a party room or something like it. It was a large, fancy room that looked like a living room with marble floors and walls. From the background seen through the windows, I could tell the location was at least 10 stories high, probably more. The first few frames started innocently. As filming progressed, everything became more absurd. I definitely did not expect to see all this. Almost all the girls were without outerwear. In the end, most, if not all, were engaged in intimacy. I felt completely drained. The person taking the pictures was unsure of himself, and the timestamps on the pictures diverged more and more, probably due to the fact that the photographer was more passionate about his actions. I realized that her cousin Stephanie was taking pictures of her when I saw selfies of her undressing. There were a lot of photos. How stupid or drunk could Stephanie be? Obviously, both. My world has collapsed. Divorce was inevitable. Wait. Then I noticed something. I looked again. At first I was focused on the content and actions, feeling panicked and not thinking logically. Jessica appeared in only 2 of the photos taken after they left the club, number 3 and number 7. In both, she was fully clothed, alone, and in the background. The timestamp on number 7 was 11:55 p.m. I checked my text history and she had texted me at 1 minute past midnight. Then it clicked. Relief washed over me. I had been feeling so low, but suddenly I wasn't. I double-checked. I triple-checked the backgrounds of every shot. I spent an hour and a half examining each one. I was nearly overwhelmed with relief. Jessica was not in any of the pictures after number 7. She had left. Minutes later, she was in her room going to bed. She could have faked it and gone back, I suppose, but I chose to believe she had maintained her boundaries. There was no evidence to suggest otherwise, despite the abundance of evidence against the other women. I wasn't thrilled about her going to some kind of private club room or something, but I could deal with that. I was seriously starting to lose my grip for a while. Emily was at a friend's house, and I was at the airport parking the car when I got a text at 3:40. Plane door open. I was good, but don't ask about the trip. Another text followed shortly after. Do not ask. Shutting phone off. Clearly, she did not want to get into a discussion with me. I was waiting in front of security when she saw me. I saw a storm of conflicting emotions in her eyes. Then she broke. She just broke, and ran the last 10 feet into my arms. I held her close as she dropped her carry-on and sobbed, really hard. People gave us concerned looks, so I took her aside to a bench. Her eyes were very red. She said, "Never bring up this trip." It was a deeply sorrowful demand. I looked at her and said, "I know what happened." She sat there, clearly calculating her response. I could have played it like a chess game, probing her and what she knew. Instead, I chose to be gentle and comforting. I love her, and was determined to end the torment in her mind. I held her hands. Last night, Stephanie was taking pictures. Late at night, her husband got suspicious and found the photos. They were bad. She began to cry softly. I stood up and extended a hand, which she took, and I gently squeezed her hand. We walked to baggage claim, then to short-term parking, and finally to the car in silence. We got in, and I started driving, giving her space to sort out her conflicted thoughts. She stared out the window in silence until she realized her phone was still off, so she turned it on. Ping, 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 ping. She read her messages as they came in, and I saw her tense up as she read. I glanced at her face and saw a tear roll down her cheek. A minute later, she broke down again and started sobbing. The situation was escalating quickly. The betrayed husbands had clearly coordinated their response well. I let her absorb the messages as they kept coming in. Even after the initial barrage, she was still receiving one every minute or so. She just stared at her phone. I assumed she was watching her sister, cousins, and friends' lives fall apart. When we got home, Emily saw us arrive and came over, eager to see her mom. "Mom!" Emily ran to her, but upon seeing Jessica's expression, she almost panicked. "What's wrong, Mom?" I stepped in. "Your mom's not feeling well. Go play." Emily didn't believe it, but nodded and went to her room after hugging her mom and saying, "I love you, Mommy." Jessica managed a weak smile. Her daughter's loving words were a balm for her wounded soul. I looked at Jessica. "Jess, weren't you going to tell me where you were?" She took my question as an accusation and glared at me. "I was. It's okay." She stood there, urging me to repeat it. She didn't lie about being okay. She couldn't lie anyway. I exhaled. "I meant that you were going to hide it, or at least keep quiet." She paused, looked down, then nodded. Almost in a whisper, she said, "Maddie was dancing with some guy in that room. It was dirty dancing. His hands were under her dress. I witnessed it and left. I'm not even sure they noticed me leaving. Others behaved the same way when I looked back as I was leaving." I nodded. "Because of the messages?" She thought for a moment. I said to her, "I'll share what I know if you share what you have. Yes, I may know more than you, and it seems like many other women will soon be divorced. I want us to move past this, but I need to piece together that awful night in my mind, or else I'll always wonder about the what-ifs." She nodded, then handed me her phone with her texts open. I took her to our computer and opened my email. She showed me hers, so I showed her mine. She cried and then pleaded, "Please, don't divorce me." What on earth? I wasn't thrilled about her going to that suite, but it wasn't a deal-breaker for our marriage. Not even close, honestly. I went over and sat in my recliner, then leaned back. I looked at her and opened my arms. She said nothing, but crawled onto my lap, and I wrapped my arms around her. We stayed like that for an hour. Emily came in, hungry because it was late. I dislike the extra cost, but I ordered Arby's through DoorDash. We all enjoy the sandwiches, so it was an easy choice. I added a $10 tip and a note, "Arrive in less than half an hour, and I'll give you an additional $20. The sandwiches arrived 20 minutes later, delivered by a young, pimple-faced kid who was pounding on our door impatiently. $20 well spent. We didn't bring anything up until later that night after Emily had gone to bed. I said, "We need to discuss this." She nodded, but then shook her head. "Tomorrow. If we talk about it tonight, I'll lose my mind." I agreed, confident that she hadn't been with those men and hadn't explicitly refused. She simply needed some space to process, and I respected that. Suggesting we retire early for some cuddling, I knew it would involve being naked. We both cherished the simplicity and intimacy of spooning, where I'd encircle her with my arms. No, I didn't insist on intimacy. Despite being a guy, I wasn't insensitive. I held her for 2 hours while she intermittently cried. I just kept holding her close. Around 10, she began to calm down, gradually relaxing and melding into me. Whenever she moved closer, I tightened my embrace. As she drifted off, I whispered, "I love you, Jess." I felt her relax completely as exhaustion overtook her. Sunday, I woke up to Jessica's gaze fixed on me. In her eyes, I discerned a blend of sorrow and affection. She offered a faint smile, then tenderly caressed my cheek and planted a kiss on my nose, whispering, "I love you, Michael." Emily tapped on the door, adhering to our household protocol. Though she was aware of our sleeping arrangements, we kept it discreet. Our rule was simple. Knock, and we'll respond when ready. I slipped into my boxers while Jessica donned her robe, and once ready, we greeted Emily. She was famished. Jessica exchanged a meaningful glance with me before stating, "Later this afternoon." I concurred, and we assumed our parental duties with our daughter before heading to the park. I was taken aback by how much time it consumed, but Jessica's mother called, concerned about her sister, prompting inquiries about our well-being. Jessica reassured her, albeit with a hint of uncertainty. "We're okay, mostly." I nodded in agreement as she added, "We'll manage." Her tone and gaze seemed to imply a question, to which I responded with a nod. They conversed for a while, discussing Sarah's canceled wedding and Stephanie's impending divorce. With each passing moment, Jessica appeared increasingly distressed as she conversed with her mother. I phoned my parents and requested they pick up Emily. I gave them a brief rundown of the chaotic situation unfolding and assured them that Jessica and I were okay. Once my parents had Emily, Jessica glanced at me thoughtfully before launching into conversation. She had agreed to talk and was now ready to hold up her end of the deal, which I had backed away from the night before. After reaching our hotel, I retreated to my room to change. I messaged you when our evening began. Our first stop was at a place called Tahiti Tom's. It was somewhat run down, but Brittany had recommended it. It turned out to be disappointing. I had a tiny, terrible pina colada, and we departed swiftly. The next venue was Sherry Shenanigans. It was an improvement. I enjoyed a couple of good mimosas there. However, the noise level was too high, so Stephanie suggested we try a place called Attractions. We spent about an hour there. I realized I was definitely intoxicated, but still capable of walking and talking, so I slowed down on my drinking. I rebuffed numerous guys asking me to dance, but did dance with Stephanie and later Carrie. It was quite enjoyable, actually. Some guys tried to linger, but most got the message quickly. One was particularly persistent, and I had to firmly ask him to leave, which he eventually did. Around 11, a strikingly handsome man arrived accompanied by 8 to 10 equally attractive men. "Wow, I'm sorry," she exclaimed, looking up. I shrugged, fully aware that there were men more attractive than me. She sighed and continued, "So Brittany couldn't contain herself. That's Carl Albertson." I found out he was a contestant on Dancing with the Stars. Shrugging again, Jessica pulled out her phone and showed me a web page about him. Damn it, this guy was almost so attractive that he made me doubt his attractiveness. With his dark blonde hair and piercing blue eyes, he looked like he stepped off the cover of a romance novel, a Nordic, or rather Swedish god. She went on, "So he was with his friends who were, equally stunning." Ava immediately started flirting with Carl, laying it on thick. I didn't like it, especially when she started dancing with him. The other men began trying to pair off with us. Some guy named John tried to strike up a conversation with me, but I barely engaged, and he got the hint and moved on to Stephanie. There was dancing and flirting, but nothing too intense. Carl suggested we all head to his suite. He was performing in a dance show at the hotel. He possesses a private elevator concealed behind a desk, guarded by a security officer. Upon ascending, we entered his expansive suite adorned with marble and luxury, featuring a spacious living room. However, our visit was brief, as the situation quickly escalated. Maddie's companion, evidently a director of some sort, made inappropriate advances, to which Maddie offered no objection. Shocked, I witnessed him further crossing boundaries until I realized I needed to excuse myself. In a state of panic, my foremost thought was to ensure Michael knew I was blameless. Later, she confessed, "I had a feeling the truth would surface. I hadn't intended to disclose anything, but I needed to assure you of my fidelity." I retired to my room, preparing for bed. Those 2 photos I sent, somehow I knew they would exonerate me. Listening, I nodded, processing her account. It aligned with her previous statements, devoid of inconsistencies. Then I offered a reassuring smile. Surprised, she asked, "You believe me?" I affirmed, "Yes, you truly frightened me." I was on the brink of contemplating divorce when I received that call, unable to piece everything together. Her expression saddened. Would you consider it? Divorcing me? Even after a decade? I nodded, saying, Listen, I can't say I'm thrilled you went up to the suite, but I can handle it, and honestly, I forgive you. It was a foolish move, but you were surrounded by 11 even bigger fools and just went along. She glanced at me. But after 10 years, if I had... I shook my head. Listen, Jess, I'm not someone who shares easily. You promised me exclusive access to your body, and that's something I couldn't handle being compromised. Your body belongs to me, and mine to you. I take my commitment to you seriously. She looked at me expectantly. You've what? I sighed. I've had a couple of opportunities. Older women, usually in their 40s or early 50s, offering me more business if I'd accompany them as an escort to various events. Black-tie charity affairs. I'm good at conversation, it helps with clients, and some of them are women. But I never pursue anything. She leaned back, processing the information. She dealt with more advances than I did, but it happened to me too. I'm not unattractive. I can hold a conversation. And I smell good. She turned to me. That time we got the invitation for the Breast Cancer Society of Greater Charlotte. I nodded. It was addressed to me, not us. She sighed. Damn. I was upset with you for declining it. I exhaled. Would you have allowed me to leave knowing Deborah Karstens was my companion? Even if it was purely platonic? I gestured air quotes around platonic. She vigorously shook her head. Absolutely not. I replied, Precisely. By the way, she made it abundantly clear it was anything but platonic, but assured discretion. She leaned back, sighing. You did that for me? I nodded. I did it for both of us. You realize I'm content, right? She paused, then realized, Damn, you lost that account. I nodded. And now you understand why. She glanced at me. What other secrets are you keeping? Damn. I informed her about the 2 previous occasions I had been directly approached, but those weren't as significant, and I politely declined. I didn't mention the indirect instances. Then she shared about rejecting a promotion from her previous boss, which explained why she abruptly changed jobs despite liking her old one. She feared I might react aggressively and land myself in trouble, so she removed herself from the situation. She was quite attractive. If she recounted every time she was hit on, it would take forever. She inquired about the night she was out. I confessed my insecurity and concerns about her going out. It stung her, but I reminded her that among the Vegas party, she was the only one whose relationship wasn't at immediate risk. She requested my perspective on the rest of the night. Fair is fair. You know, I was in a rough spot. The whole bachelorette party in Vegas, getting wasted. It was a terrible idea. Anyway, Emily had a ton of homework on Friday night. 2 hours of homework for a 3rd grader on a Friday? We powered through it, then I treated her to some pizza and chocolate milkshakes. She glanced at me. You spoil our daughter. I grinned. You bet I do. She sighed, then smiled. You're such a dad. You adore her. I smiled back. Absolutely. Jessica kissed me, not just a peck. Keep it up. She loves you. I continued. So I got your texts before 11, and honestly, they made things worse. It was obvious you were drunk texting. She nodded. Yeah, definitely drunk. Not falling over, but definitely drunk. I couldn't sleep. It took me 4 hours to finally doze off. When I woke up that morning and saw your texts from around midnight, I was immediately like, why did she send that? My mood didn't improve. Later, I got a call from one of the husbands. Stephanie's husband had received the pictures from Stephanie's phone and found my contact. Jessica shook her head. Damn. Stephanie taking pictures was such a dumb move. I agreed. Yeah, but with a dozen of you, I doubt it would have stayed a secret. She nodded in agreement. The phone call basically informed me that everyone had cheated, and he sent me a link to the photos. You appear in 2 photos at the beginning of the time in that suite. I was extremely worried and panicked as I scrolled through the pictures, fearing that my life was ruined. However, I noticed something bothering me. You were only in 2 very early photos. Upon checking the timestamp, everything matched up. Your texts also corroborated the situation as you had described. You recognized the risk and distanced yourself from it. I let out a sigh. It really hurt thinking you had joined in with your cheating friends. You can't imagine how relieved I was when I put everything together. As I recounted my night and how I had discovered it, she glanced at me, then looked down with a sigh. It was a grave or troubling moment, perhaps both. I prepared myself, and she confessed, I was tempted. This was not unexpected news. One guy was rich, attractive, and famous, while the others just seemed wealthy and handsome. It was unpleasant to hear these words, but they did not come as a shock. Everyone faces temptations from time to time. I nodded cautiously. It was clear that we needed a sincere conversation, even if it meant hearing the bitter truth. I sighed. Go on. She braced herself. All these men were in their early 20s, and they were beautiful. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I witnessed Maddie being groped, and I left right away. But even before it happened, I was watching these men. Her gaze dropped, and she confessed, I was wondering what it would be like to have a similar adventure with one of them. You and I are just... It's boring. It was painful, a lot. But at least she included me in her assessment. She looked at me, her voice trembling slightly. I have to be a good girl. She said it like it was an expletive. I nodded. She mentioned it. I like it, but we're stuck in the same routine. I need some joy. But with you, I could handle it. I put Emily to bed around 9. Jessica was waiting for me in our room when I returned. She was smiling, and she was ready for the evening ahead. After 15 minutes, we were done, and it was perfect. We took a shower together, and then hugged in bed. She snuggled into my arms, and I fell asleep. In the weeks that followed, we engaged in more open discussions. She insisted that neither of us should take risky trips alone, like attending bachelor or bachelorette parties out of town. I could only smile and agree. Initially, she eyed my quick agreement with suspicion, but then relaxed, realizing I shared her concerns. We delved into what-ifs. What if she had been more intoxicated? What if one of the men had slipped date rape drugs into her drink? What if? What if? What if? Although it was a somewhat distant, near miss, it prompted us to consider how to avoid such situations in the future. Our marriage flourished because we put effort into it. We opened up to each other about our innermost desires and fetishes. He admitted that he felt trapped by expectations of being a good girl and expressed dissatisfaction with our banal bed life. I assured her I'd welcome her exploring her wild side, but only with me. We certainly added some excitement to our intimacy. While we never entertained the idea of bringing a third party into our bedroom, of any gender, or engaging in extramarital affairs, we did introduce some variety. I understand that those in the BDSM and hot wife communities might find our version of wild amusing. Regarding the remaining chaos, 3 of the women were given opportunities for reconciliation. Only 1 seems to have succeeded. Out of 12 relationships, only 2 survived, including our marriage. I'm uncertain about the success of the other surviving marriage. Perhaps their 2 children played a role. Over the next 2 years, I declined an invitation to a bachelor's weekend in New Orleans, while she turned down a bachelorette party in Miami. However, in 2025, Jessica attended her best friend Elizabeth's bachelorette party in Vegas, and I ended up being the chaperone. Ugh, Vegas of all places. Despite my initial reluctance, everything turned out fine. Although I wasn't thrilled about going to a male strip club where they went all out, nothing untoward happened. Interestingly, after the trip, all the women I chaperoned remained married or were still on track to get married, including the bride. While some husbands initially objected to the idea of mail delivery being one of the stops, they relented upon learning that I was the chaperone. Admittedly, I'm not a fan of such sights, and I received plenty of odd looks at mail delivery, along with several offers for lap dances, all of which I politely declined. I faced criticism from 3 husbands who were discussing my enjoyment of my time at mail delivery. However, I want to clarify that I did not enjoy it at all, and I made sure to keep the women out of the VIP room. On a positive note, 2 husbands kindly delivered 24 packs of my favorite brew to my house, and another gentleman sent me a $500 gift card from Cabela's, along with a note expressing gratitude for preventing him from spending $2,000 on a private investigator. He questioned why Vegas was tempting fate with marriages. Though the sender didn't provide a return address, I was grateful for the gesture. The ladies were delighted with this bachelorette party, and most of them got very drunk both times. They really let their feelings run wild, but I stayed away like a wound-up driver. For the next 2 weeks, Jess didn't leave my side, showing her gratitude for my support during her adventure. She surprised me by inviting me to a sorority in Atlanta, 3 hours away, where she was sure none of her friends would notice us. She performed the Monty dance and gave me an unforgettable lap dance, exclusively for me. A month later, we spent the $800 she earned as a tip on a weekend trip. Our bed life has certainly become more intense, as I have already mentioned. I know you all might think I'm a bit of a wimp if I don't mind her Vegas plans, but I'm happily married and had a great time last night. So, for those who judge, to hell with it. And as for my wife, she stays where she belongs on her pedestal just like I like it.